Hello, Mzansi. You are listening to Farmers Inside Track, proudly brought to you by Food for Mzansi. I'm Patricia Tembo, your host. Welcome to episode 515. Today, we're looking at the key components that make for a winning business plan. Of course, this episode is set to be both informative and practical as we welcome Siziphiwe Jojo, who is an agricultural economist and head of business at Agricast Advisory Services. Siziphiwe Jojo, welcome to Farmers Inside Track. We're so excited to have you on today's podcast.
Hi, Patricia. Thank you so much for having me. I am also excited to be here today. Thank you for giving me this platform to chat to you today.
You were recently with us at the Farmers Day in Free State, where you explained what's necessary for farmers to compile like a winning business plan. So It's nice to have you now on the podcast to unpack that, as a few of the farmers actually requested, which is, wonderful. So you are head of business development at Agricast Advisory Services. But for our listeners who maybe haven't heard of you or haven't heard of Agricast Advisory Services, could you please just unpack the work you're doing in the agri space and know a little bit more about yourself as well?
All right. So Siziphiwe Jojo is an agricultural economist and an aspiring farmer. I am passionate about all things agribusiness development, animal production specifically, and agricultural policy making. I studied at the University of the Free State, where I did my Bachelor of Agriculture and Agricultural Economics and was awarded the ABSA Award for the Best Final Year Student in Agricultural Economics. And then I did my postgraduate diploma at the University of South Africa, a postgrad diploma in agriculture with specialization in agribusiness. And then I have some work experience with the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, where I worked in cooperatives and enterprise development, where we worked with emerging farmers, just helping them develop their businesses. I actually did a business plan for the Vicksburg Farmer Production Support Unit, which is a great project, like a huge project of the Department of Agriculture as developed under the framework of the National Development Plan Vision 2030. So yeah, that was exciting. And now I am heading up the business development unit at Agricast Advisory, where we help develop businesses still by like doing business plans, conducting farm assessments, and then generally seeing what advice and what we can do to help our clients improve their production practices and generally their business operations.
Wow, Siziphiwe, you are a brilliant woman. Thanks you speaking, and I'm like, oh my word, this is amazing that we have you on the podcast as well. Congratulations on the accolades that you've achieved so early on already in your career. The fact that you mentioned that you are an aspiring farmer, but also, you have the foundational background in agricultural economics as an agricultural economist. I think it's the perfect setting, for you to unpack today's topic, which is developing an agribusiness plan for farmers to really position themselves well. They're starting their farming businesses. So what is a business plan? And maybe for farmers who obviously might not really understand the necessity of it, if you could just unpack what a business plan is and why it's important.
A business plan is a formal written document that farmer can use to outline their goals for the business, basically a roadmap that shows how the business will operate, what goals does it want to achieve, and how it will grow and be sustained in the long term. So with a business plan, you can use it internally or externally. Internally, it is for the farmer to use and make plans for their production. For instance, if you're a farmer that is in crop production, then you can use it for like planning your crop rotations, budgeting for your expenses and your expected revenue, as well as knowing the market you are operating in and planning for it, as well as the risks that you can expect and mitigate it. So it helps you stay focused, plan properly, And you can use it as a yardstick to check if you are still well on your way to achieving your goals. And then if you're going to be using a business plan externally, maybe to like seek funding and find investors, then it's basically a document that will speak for you to your investors, where you can show them that this is what you produce, this is what you need funding for, what it's going to be used for, and generally what they can gain from getting in partnership with you. So it's very important for farmers to have a business plan because agriculture is very unpredictable. There's volatile markets. You cannot predict the weather. So it helps you stay focused and plan for these things that can come up. And it's a very important tool for growing your business and showing that you have a viable and sustainable operation that other people can invest in. So with your business plan, you can update it annually. I would recommend that it's a document that you update annually, or whenever there's like a major change in your business. For instance, if you are a livestock farmer and you get more livestock, obviously the scale you are operating in will change here, and then it will change everything else with your finances and the operations and whatnot. So yeah.
It sounds that there are several functions that a business plan that has the purpose of. You mentioned internal and external, those functions being internal as well as external. But I know for farmers listening, accessing funding is probably like the most important thing, which we'll get to later. But I think, just to, I suppose, set the foundation of this conversation, if you could explain what the key elements are of a business plan specific to agricultural businesses. Not sure how many, components there are, but maybe just to go through each one, explaining each. Yeah.
With a business plan, it's a proposal, right? So you can do pretty much whatever you feel will convey the information that you need to convey properly. But there are 7 key components that I would recommend that you have, no matter how you decide to approach compiling your business plan. And the first one would be your executive summary. So this is usually drafted last, but then you put it in front because it has an overview of everything that you have covered in the business plan. And it also has the vision, the mission, and the objectives of your business. So for people who do not know the difference between the three, with your vision, it's basically your long-term goal for your business put into one sentence. So this is what you wish to achieve with your whole operation, like why you started your business and what you aim to achieve in the end by having your business. And then with your mission, it sums up your short-term goals of your business. So this is, for instance, what you want to achieve in the next year or the next 5 years. And then with your objectives, this is what sets you apart with your investors and where you get into detail of how you are going to achieve your mission and your vision. So with this part, I would also recommend that you align it to whatever institution or organization that you are trying to seek support from. For instance, if you are going to be applying for support from the Department of Agriculture where you are asking for production inputs, then you align your objectives to things that speak to the department, things that they value so that they can see that this is a farmer that we would want to support. So for instance, you would speak on wanting to hire more people for the financial year. So this is job creation, something that the department values. Or if you are approaching an investor, then you can focus on the profits that you're going to make. This is what I'm going to do to achieve more profits. So it speaks to them and then they know that this is someone that we would want to invest in. So yeah, with the executive summary, you will cover everything, just a summary of each and every section that you have in your business plan. So that usually when people read a business plan, they will start with the executive summary before going through everything else and then head straight to the finances, if you manage to get their attention with the executive summary. So yeah, it's very important.
From what you're saying, it sounds almost like the bio for your business because, we all know how social media works. And
yes, exactly. So after this section, you are going to have your company description or business description. You can word it however you want. So with this section, you cover the background of the business. So you will speak on how it was established, when was it established, by who, why, like if there's any interesting history about your business that you want to talk about, then this is the section that you can use to cover all of this. And then you are going to cover where your business is located. Why is this location a great place to have your business? For instance, if you are a dry bean farmer based in the Eastern Free State, you can mention that the Eastern Free State is the top producer of dry beans in South Africa. So this is how your investors know that, okay, this person is operating in a suitable place for this. So that could possibly mean less risk. And then you will also cover the legal structure of your business. So this is basically your incorporation. Are you a cooperative? Are you a private company? Are you an NGO? So basically the structure you operate in is important because your investor needs to know, am I dealing with one person? Is it a huge business? Like the scale of the business. And then you also cover the ownership. This is basically giving information on who holds the rights and makes major decisions in the business so that investors also know that, okay, this is the person I'm going to be dealing with. Is it black owned? Is it 100% black owned? Because things like that matter. For instance, if you are trying to seek support from the Agri-BEE fund, which wants a certain ownership from like black people. So yes. The third one, we have our market analysis. So this is where you show off that you've done research on the market that you are operating within. So first, you will cover your business case. So with your business case, you will provide stats about the commodity that you are producing, like how high is the demand? How is the demand going to grow in a couple of years? Is it a growing industry? Like what's happening in the industry? And is there a need for the commodity that you are producing? So you're basically justifying that I am producing this because this is what the market wants and there are more people who are demanding this. And then you are also going to cover your target market. For instance, you operate in the informal market. So you will speak on the local shops that you aim on supplying to and how you will go about this. And then, for instance, if you're in the formal market, you will speak on the certifications that you have that allow you to operate in this market. Which formal markets are you supplying to? So you can basically show your investor that you have a solid market that will buy what you are producing, and you have plans on how you will enter these markets and retain this market. And then you will also speak on your competition and your value proposition, which is basically how you plan on being better than, your competitors, because with every business, there are competitors. So you need to highlight how you will stick out and be better than your competitors. And then this is also a section where I would recommend that you add your SWOT analysis. For people who do not know what a SWOT analysis, this is where you analyze the strength, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats of your business. So with the strengths and weaknesses, this is where you look at your business internally and you see your strengths, that this is what we are good at, and you basically highlight how you are going to capitalize on the strengths. And then your weaknesses, this is what we struggle with, and this is how we plan on improving from our weaknesses. And then with the opportunities and the threats, you look at the external environment of the businesses. So these are the opportunities that are available for us. And this is how we're going to take advantage of those opportunities. And then these are the threats that are there, for instance, your pests, the weather conditions, and how you plan on mitigating these threats and having control, like some sort of control over them.
You're unpacking it also well. I'm just curious to know, especially with the market analysis, and, that's something that an investor will obviously really dive into when they're considering, investing. Who is the business plan once you've gone over all the 7 elements that you will? Who is it for? It's for the investor. It is for yourself as the business owner. When compiling it, is it the same approach to business plan, the same for an investor? Or when you're making a business plan for yourself, would that be a separate business plan? Maybe if you could just speak a little bit more about that.
I would recommend that you have 2 business plans if you can. As I mentioned, you can use it internally for yourself or externally for investors that you would like to approach. So for yourself, you would have a standard business plan. So for instance, the difference with a business plan that you will be giving to an investor and one that you will have for yourself, when you look at the objectives, for example, then here you will have all your objectives that, you'd like to focus on internally, like maybe training more staff. These are things that concern you and your business. You wouldn't want to let an investor know that you still need to train. You can, but these are the things that concern you versus the objectives for when you are seeking support from the department, maybe where you speak on hiring more people and creating more job creation. So internally, you will have a standard viable business plan. So, it's just standard, like all the things that concern your business that will help you make decisions and plan properly. And then for a business that you are taking to investors, you call it a bankable, viable business plan. So by bankable, we mean your financial projections are on point, like they can see that you've done an analysis with the finances you've planned, and they will, for instance, if you are asking for a loan, you've covered how you'll be able to repay the loan. If you are approaching an investor, then they can see you've done ratios that show that this will be the return on equity or return on investments.
So you've unpacked the executive summary. That's the first thing. Second thing is the business description, the market analysis. And I think with market analysis, we'll a little bit later go into how approaching it in terms of commodities, because to unpack a little bit further, but to just continue the business plan, take us into the 4th component.
The 4th component, we have the organization and management. So under this section, you will cover the structure of your business in the form of an organogram. So an organogram is basically a flow chart that shows like how authority runs through the business. So for instance, you will have your farm manager at the top in charge of the second tier, where you maybe have your admin manager, your production manager, your financial manager. And then at the bottom, that's where you will have your farm workers, your drivers, your security. So it shows the structure of the business as a whole. And then you will have the key profiles of like your management and the business. For instance, if you are cooperative with 5 members and you have your chairperson, your treasury, your secretary, your deputy treasury, your deputy secretary. So this is where you cover their profiles, like their experience, their expertise, what do they know, what are their responsibilities, so that this can help you show your investors that you have competent people with experience that they can trust to run your business. Even you for yourself, this is where internally you get to spot, okay, so with my treasury, maybe I can plan training for financial management. This is how I can help them improve. And this is what they can do in order to get better in managing. So this is where you get to analyze the employees that you have, if they are contributing well and doing exactly what they need to do, and if there's any more support that you need to provide for them.
I suppose this is also where a farm business can attract investment in terms of training, companies or organizations like AgriCita
Yeah,
operate.
rates
So
100%.
And then knowing our audience, we also have people who are really just starting. So they don't necessarily have personnel under them, or they're not necessarily employing people permanently. So for example, agripreneurs, how would they go about this section?
So with this part of the section, it's the organization and management, right? I mentioned, for example, if it basically focuses on the management, right? So if your legal structure, as I mentioned, is a cooperative, so you have those people, the chairperson, the treasury, the secretary, your deputies. So these are the people it focuses on, and if they're the only one managing and you haven't worked with other people, say I am sole operator. So I will speak about myself because I'm the manager of the organization. If they're farm workers, then of course you can add it in the organogram that at the bottom you have your farm workers. If you don't, then that's not going to be part of your organogram. But in terms of taking into account the workers and the type of labor that you hire, this is going to be covered under the operational plan. So with the organization and management, you only focus on the structure of your management and how it flows through the organization from the top to the bottom, and the management that you have in place, their expertise and, their qualifications, at what puts them at the place where they are in management.
How the organization and management section differs, or I guess supplements the executive summary. As you mentioned earlier on, the executive summary, you speak on ownership, and maybe if it's a cooperative or a co-ownership, or, there's a partnership involved, how would a farmer differentiate between the executive summary and then this section of organization and management?
Okay, so in the executive summary, remember I said this is where you basically sum up everything else that you've covered from the other components. So taking from the organization and management section and you putting this in your executive summary. So you would say something like, we have 5 board members in our management, and you name them. You don't have to go into detail again about the expertise. You just name them that this is our structure. We have 5 board members and these are their names. And then in total, we have 35 farm workers. You're summarizing everything. So you're taking a bit from your company description where you say this is the type of legal structure. You're taking a bit from your organization and management section where you mention that you have 5 board members, which are detailed in the organization and management. You're taking a bit from your operational plan where you talk about where you take it from the operational plan that this is how many farm workers that we have. So that is basically what you do in the executive summary. You take a bit from here and there, to give a summary, a basic overview of everything. So with your legal structure under the company description, this is where you say, for instance, I have a cooperative with 5 members, and this is how our cooperative operates. You speak on the legal structure and not the people and what they do. So you speak on the type of structure you have. So you say in our cooperative, there's one person who comes with the skills. There's one person who comes with a machinery. And then there's one person who comes with the land. And this is how we came together to form this cooperative. So you're giving a description of your business and your legal structure. And this is why we come together under organization and management. That's where you look at the business members, the actual people, and what Patricia does, her roles, her responsibilities. She's got 5 years of experience, and Siziphiwe comes in with 10 years of experience, and this is what she does under her role as the treasury.
Thanks, Siziphiwe. So going into the 5th component, unpack it for us.
So with your 5th component, you have your marketing strategy. So this is where you cover how you will attract customers, how you will retain customers, and how you plan on generating your revenue. So for instance, if you are a dry bean farmer and you are anticipating producing 35 tons, this is where you go into details that out of the 35 that I will produce, I will sell 30 tons to my market, and I will maybe use 3 tons and I will donate it to like the local school or something. And then maybe I will use the 2 tons for household consumption. So this is where you go into details that I will be generating revenue from the 30 tons out of the 35 tons that I've produced. And then this is also where you cover your pricing strategy. So depending on the type of market that you're operating in, informal or the formal market, for instance, farmers operating in the informal market are usually price takers. They work according to what the market is charging at the time. If you're in the formal market, then it's different there because you usually have contracts before you even produce. So by the time you harvest, you already know this is the price that I'm getting for a ton, and you can cover it in this section. And then this is where I would advise you to do your break-even analysis or your sensitivity analysis. So with the break-even analysis, it basically shows you how many units you need to sell in order to like break even and cover all your costs and start making a profit. Or sensitivity analysis, where you can basically play around with numbers on Excel. It's a table where you see if you are charging a certain amount for a certain number of tons, how much profit will you make? So it will basically guide you on the minimum amount that you need to charge in order to cover all your costs and start making a profit. So as a farmer, when you look at the break-even analysis, then you know that for my costs, I should not go below this price. Otherwise, I will not make a profit. And then with your marketing strategy, you also cover your promotional strategy, like the advertising, the brand. How are you going to promote your brand? Maybe you're going to approach Food from Zanzi and have an interview with them and tell people about your business. Like, how are you going to get your business out there? And then you can also cover your customer relations management. So this is how you retain your customers, by basically building a relationship with them. Or like maybe saying, if I've supplied like to you for like 10 years, maybe, then I will give like those clients a discount because I've worked with them for so long and whatnot. So yes, that is what you cover under the marketing strategy.
It does sound like the marketing strategy would be quite straightforward for a commercial farmer, but for our commercializing farmers or farmers who are still trying to break into being commercial, it sounds like this marketing strategy part is very crucial and is closely tied to the market analysis. Is there anything maybe you could say in terms of market analysis and how that informs the marketing strategy?
So these two are very related. As you said, it depends on like the scale at which you're farming in. So it will be easier for your commercial farmer because they usually have offtake agreements and they know before they even start producing that I need to produce 35 tons of maize for the milling plant, and I'm taking my produce to the silo after I harvest, and this is how much I'm going to be getting for the 35 tons that I'm going to be selling. So with your marketing analysis, it's straightforward. You know your target market, that I'm taking it to your silo. You know that your competition, you've obviously good with that because you sorted for this financial, like for this financial year or for the season, because you've already secured this. And then the business case, obviously still the same, where you know that there is a need for this maize that I'm producing. That's why I have a silo that I'm taking it to. But then it's very different for informal markets, because with informal markets, there's no contracts. You don't get a contract. You basically just see after you harvest. So you need to be flexible in terms of what you are supplying to the market. That's why you'll find that most emerging crop producers rotate their crops. so that for each season they have something that they're supplying. They need to plan so that they know with whatever price they get, they're still able to cover their costs. This is where your CRM is important, having good relationships like with those street vendors that you want to take your produce to that local shop you want to take your produce to. It's quite flexible and you need to be ready, to meet whatever demand. You need to be ready to have a plan on what you're going to do if your produce doesn't sell. So you need to cover those things and have strategies in place on what you can do depending on how volatile the market is at the time. So I think it's quite trickier supplying to the informal market because there anything can happen.
And you mentioned CRM. What does that stand for?
CRM is customer relations management. So this is basically just your strategy for retaining your customers, like building a good relationship with them so that you can know that next season, they're still there and you still have a good relationship. They still want to get produce from you. So it's those strategies that you have in place, like maybe giving them discounts or saying, for instance, instead of them bringing their trucks all the way to come get the produce from you, you will take it there yourselves, having those things in place to maintain a good relationship with your customers.
Maybe take us through the last two now, 6 and 7.
So now we have the operational plan. Very, very important because this covers how your business will operate. And we know with farming, there is a lot of labor involved. Like time is very important. So if you miss a certain window within like the period of planting, then, it's late for you. So it's important to have your production processes in place and your production management systems where you highlight your dates on when you need to do something and how you're going to do it, which resources you are going to need to carry out these production processes. And then this section is going to obviously differ according to the commodity that you are producing. So for instance, with your livestock farmers under your operation plan, you are going to focus more on your breeding cycles, when your livestock will mate, when you expect like new cows, for example, if you are in beef production, and then you will focus on the health, so what kind of health processes do you need? Maybe you have a vet come in every month. This is how you take care of your animals to ensure that they are healthy and good all the time. And then you will cover like your biosecurity. When it comes to animals, they're very sensitive to the outside world. So this is where you will have like in place where you cover that this is how I protect my animals from the outside world. And this is how I protect my workers as well from the animals. Because there is zoonotic diseases, which are diseases that can be transferred from animals to people. So for someone with a livestock farm, this is basically where you have an operational plan of how you will be handling these things in terms of your animals. And then if you are operating with like crops, then your operational plan is going to be different because here you will cover the seasons that you plan on producing in. You will look at your land preparation. You will look at the irrigation systems that you are going to use, for example, and so on, so that your investors can also know if I am supporting Patricia's enterprise with seeds, for example, these are the dates where she will be planting. So I need to ensure that by that time I have brought those seeds to our farm. So it basically details things like that, your waste management for your livestock, because the livestock usually like emits toxins into the environment if there's not a proper waste management plan in place. So yeah, under your operational plan, this is the type of things that you cover.
Would licensing fall under this in terms of, like say water licenses, for example?
Yes, this is where it will fall under.
And maybe because you've touched on commodities, I think let's just speak a little bit about that. And when approaching a business plan. There's livestock, there's obviously various commodities, but if you maybe guide the farmers who are listening in terms of how to best construct a business plan according to their specific commodities, because I'm quite sure it obviously differs.
So I wouldn't say it differs quite a lot, in terms of like the key components, but there are those sections that are going to be different according to the commodity that you are producing. For instance, the operational plan that I've covered, that if you are a livestock farmer, then you will focus more on breeding cycles, the health, the biosecurity, the certification. And then if you're a crop producer, then you will focus more on the seasons and your irrigation and your land preparation. And then your marketing strategy, obviously, if you are a livestock farmer, you will speak on maybe you're going to be selling to butcheries. Like it will be specific to the type of commodity that you are producing. Because also you find that sometimes there are farmers who deal with both, so who produce livestock and crops. So you will still have a section, like under your sections, you will address both of them. You don't need to now have separate things for livestock or separate things from your crop. Organization and management, for example, you still have the same organization, you still have your management. You won't need to do something different because you are now a livestock farmer or crop farmer, but there are sections where you will obviously tailor it to like in accordance to what you are producing. Because even with like your financial plan, we're going to get into that. So yeah, I think we should leave it for when we get to the financial plan. But there's not necessarily anything you need to change with your components depending on the commodity that you're producing, but just make sure that you take into account everything that you need to take into account for. So you don't have to have a different business plan for your livestock or your crop. You can all have it like under one business plan.
For farmers who've diversified and both or several other commodities, if it's necessary to have a different business plan. But I think that's quite clear now. Thank you. Take us into the last one.
The last one, everyone's favorite, the financial plan. So the financial plan, you will start with your funding requirements. If you are seeking like investment, this is the main part where they will come and see what is it that you want. So do you want a loan to buy new tractors? Do you want a loan to buy land? What is it that you require from them? And even you internally, this is where you get to outline that, okay, this is what I need financially, and this is what I want to achieve, and I will require these resources in order to achieve my goals. So for instance, funding requirement, if you are seeking a loan, then how you structure this will be in accordance to the loan requirements. So this is where you will take into account how much you want, how many years do you plan on paying like for this loan? Is it 10 years? Is it 5 years? And the type of amortization. So is it an annual amortization or a monthly? Like, will you be paying it quarterly, monthly, or annually? And then as well as the interest rate that you will be charged on this loan. So with using these 4 aspects, you will be able to calculate how much you will be repaying monthly and basically how much you will end up paying in the end. If you start by generating this on Excel, oh, by the way, like I always recommend with your financial plan before taking it to like your main document, when you construct it, do it on Excel, because Excel enables you to play around with numbers and basically do all these calculations for you. So if you started with that on Excel and you want to approach like 3 different banks, if you change like the interest rate, it will basically show you which bank would be like the cheapest, maybe, because obviously that's what you're looking for to minimize your cost. So you can work out things like this and show them in your business plan that you are aware of what you will be paying, and you can have like a payment schedule on how you plan on paying for this. You could also cover how you can cover this if, for instance, if you don't have enough cash flow then maybe you can say you have insurance. For instance, if you borrowed money to buy production inputs and then things don't go well for you during the production season, then you can say, I've got crop insurance that will pay back the loan for me if things don't go well. Or I've got a house and 5 cars that can be used as collateral. Or I have like a reserve fund or another business that can be used to pay for this loan. So yeah, that's how you would approach your funding requirements section if you are looking for a loan, for example. And if, for instance, you are seeking support or production inputs or like machinery from the department, then you can basically write all the production inputs that you require. You don't know how much they're going to cost, so that's for them, but you can write, I need fertilizers, I need seeds, this is what I need. And then under this section, you also have to look at your enterprise budgets. And this is what we just spoke about in terms of having different commodities. So with your enterprise budgets, it looks at the per unit cost and return for a specific commodity. So it analyzes the profitability at an enterprise level. So for instance, if you have a livestock enterprise in your farming business, then this is where you will look at your costs and revenue per head, for example. And if maybe you have a crop enterprise as well, is where you will look at costs and revenue per hectare, for instance. And then you combine all these things in an income statement. But in order to show the different costs and revenues for each enterprise that is within your business, you do it with your enterprise budget. So it will show you, this is how much I'm making from my cattle. This is how I'm making from my beans. This is how I'm making from my chickens. This is how I am making from my maize. So let's say you farm with those 5 things. That's where you will look at the per unit cost and revenue for each and every enterprise. So this also helps to justify your financial projections. As I've mentioned, everything that you've taken from your enterprise budget, you combine it in the income statement. So with your projected income statement, it shows the costs and the revenue for all enterprises over a specific period. For instance, you had 2 enterprise budgets for your cattle and your maize, and you made 100,000 from your cattle and 100,000 from your maize. When it comes to the income statement, it will appear as one figure, 200K from your revenue. So if a person wants to find out where does this 200K come from, they will go back to the enterprise budgets and see that, okay, the 200K sales, 100K was taken from the cattle and the other 100K was taken from the maize. So with your income statements, it helps assess the profitability and the viability. Is it sustainable? Are you actually going to be making profits? So if it's your projected income statements for the next 5 years, it will show the profit that you expect to make in the next 5 years, which will show how viable your business is. And then, yes, I've covered enterprise budgets and income statements. An income statement basically puts together everything that happens within the different enterprise budgets. And then you will also have your projected cash flow statements. So this tracks the actual movement of cash in and out of the business. And it shows each and everything. If you bought, for instance, uniform for your farm workers, your miscellaneous, you will cover each and every cash transaction that goes in and out of the business. And it's very important for farmers where revenue is seasonal, because this is where you see, for instance, if you harvest and you get money in July, it will show if you will be able to stretch out this money that you have for the months where you will not be making any sales. You get me? And then it ensures that there is enough cash to pay your bills and your loan repayments, for example, if you took out a loan. So it goes into details that in January, this is how much will be coming in and this is how much I will spend. Because you find that if you're planting in September, you're planting dry beans in September, for example, you'll be spending more on like tractors for planting, on planters. But then the next month, there won't be such an expense because you finished your planting in September. So it goes into the monthly expenses and income so that you can know if you're going to be able to cover your costs over time. And then in the end, you have your balance sheet, which shows what the business owns and what it owes. So it shows the business stability and solvency or liquidity, which is basically, does it have enough money to pay off their loans? So this is where you will do your ratios, for example, your liquidity ratios, your solvency ratios, so that you can show that it is stable. And for instance, for every 1 rand that I owe, I have 3 rand to pay it off. So your investors can see that, okay, this is someone that will be able to like handle their debt and pay their debt over time.
That's quite a lot of things, Siziphiwe. I'm just thinking now for farmers who obviously don't have a strong background in accounting and economics, obviously so many resources available. The Standard Bank Finance and Farm Management, that book comes to. But what resources and what avenues do you have for farmers who maybe aren't able to tackle this, especially this last section, the financial planning alone? What can they do?
So farmers, firstly, I would obviously recommend myself over here, like approach experts, specialists who can help out with this, like if you can afford to, of course. But if you cannot, then you have access to your local departments, your agricultural departments, where they offer like extension services and like support for these kind of things. We spoke about business incubators earlier on, like your CEDA, your NYDA, that can provide assistance for like these type of things. And there are also resources on the internet. I mean, if you can go on Google right now and Google a business plan for something, then you can obviously find a template, but you need to have some sort of understanding for that because it's not a one size fits all. But yeah, I would definitely like recommend and advise that if you can afford like to come to an advisor like myself, then do that. But if you can't afford to, then you have your business incubators, you have the Department of Agriculture where they have extension services and offices that can assist you with such.
You're being so modest, like plug yourself.
I mean, yeah, I wish they could come to like specialists and experts that would like give an advisor. Because the thing with coming to an advisor is that you could just come for a business plan. But when you conduct a farm assessment, there are things that they will be able to see that you don't know that they can advise you on, which could help you grow like your business in a way that you didn't even think of. So I would definitely recommend coming to an advisor for such things.
Agricast Advisory Services, everybody. As an example, to wrap up the conversation, we didn't speak much about risks and, what part of the business plan speaks to. I mean, farming is very subject to markets, risks, and the environment, of course. So when drafting the business plan, how do you, where do risks fall into it?
So remember I spoke about the SWOT analysis earlier on, where you go through your strengths, your weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So with the SWOT analysis, you need to ensure when you compile your business plan that each and everything is addressed at some point within the business plan. So if you have your strengths, for example, and you can say that you hold a huge part of the market share, so you have a lot of customers, this is something you would have addressed and went into detail into under your market analysis. If you say your weakness is, for example, you struggle with the financial management, you address this in your organization. For example, if you say that you will do training for your financial manager, if there's an opportunity, for instance, and you say the opportunity is an interview with Food from Zanzi, then you will cover this under your marketing strategy where you speak on your promotional strategy. And if there's threats, for instance, these are the risks now that you just asked me about, your weather conditions or the prevalence of pests and diseases. So you will, for instance, if the risk is weather conditions, you've been getting a lot of rain, then under your operational plan, you will cover that, okay, to address this, we will now farm in a greenhouse. So this is why we are looking for investment. We want to build a greenhouse because we are currently faced with this risk of bad weather. So if we get this greenhouse, temperature controlled greenhouse, you cover it under your operational plan, that once we have this and this is how it's going to operate, it's going to make our production process better. I also mentioned that, for instance, if you are looking for a loan, then you will address it under the risks when you say for your loan, for instance, you have crop insurance in case things don't go well. So you will be able to use this insurance to pay back in case you can't pay back the loan. So from your SWOT analysis, everything you address there, each and every aspect, you will address it somewhere, somehow in your business plan. So these risks, which are things that exist in the agricultural space, for instance, the prevalence of crops, you will now address it, for instance, and your operational plan that, hey, we're going to have training for our workers so that they learn climate smart agriculture. So you're also free to obviously have a component, like to add a component dedicated to this, since it is such a major in agriculture. So you will look at all these risks that you will face and you will have strategies on how to mitigate them, whether it's through training, whether it is through like changing your production processes in order to address certain risks that may come about.
And I think to close off this episode, and I'm assuming this is probably what farmers tuned into here, or what in a business plan attracts funders? What is the foolproof components, things to include in a business plan that is attractive to people who are looking to invest into farming businesses, those financing institutions as well? And maybe if you can speak on mistakes that you see farmers make drafting their business plans.
Investment will want a clear business plan, clear, straight to the point. So this is your whole business plan. Make sure it's clear, straight to the point. Don't add things that don't need to be there. Like, don't talk about, like, for instance, weather is if you operate in an environment where the weather is suitable for what you're producing. So be clear, go straight to the point. And then investors will want to know that, yeah, you took into account the risk, the market in which you are operating in. That is why the market analysis is very important. They will want to know that you've got a strong team that knows what they're doing, that have experience, because they want to invest. If you notice, for instance, when we had the Farmers' Day, many business incubators made emphasis on the fact that they do not support startups. So they need to see that you've been operating. So investors want to see that you have people that have been doing that. You have people that have been farming, that they know what they're doing, so that they know that they're investing in something can see has been working. So it's also important to have solid financial statements. This is the most important part, your projections. So they need to see that you have potential of making profit. This is how you're going to handle your finances in order to achieve profits. They need to know for sure that they are investing into a business that will be making profits. So it's okay if you start on a negative. I know some people, a mistake that farmers make is overestimating profits so that they look attractive to like an investor, which is not great. Like, be realistic. Investors wants to see something realistic with your profits, so they know exactly what they're investing into and what they can expect, because it's not going to be great if you oversell and underperform as a farmer, because you might even lose like that support So it's better to be very realistic when it comes to your financial projections. That is a mistake that I usually see farmers do, overestimating their profits. In terms of projections, farmers need to maybe underestimate their income and overestimate their expenses just to keep everything realistic. And the ways to do projections, I would recommend using a time series analysis or a regression analysis. So a time series analysis when projecting your income and your costs is by using historical data. So look at previous years. How has the market been performing during the previous years, so that you can make your projections based on that to avoid overestimate your profits. And if there's not much on that data, you can use a regression analysis, which looks at factors that impact the costs and the income. So we know agriculture is in an environment where it's affected by a lot of things, it's affected politics, the natural environment, the weather. So look at that and how it has impacted costs. And then you can base your projections on that to try to get to a point where you have realistic projections for your income and your costs to avoid overestimating your profits. And then another mistake that I usually see farmers do is abandoning administration aspect of the farming business. So they just focus more on the labor, focus more on the planting, producing, harvesting, selling. And you see that money is from hand to mouth because there's no administration in place. There's no plan on how they will keep record of everything they're doing. There is no attention. For instance, SARS, you'll find that some farmers don't even know what's happening with their taxes. Their annual returns haven't been filed. They're not focusing on that aspect of business, making it a legal entity, which is important for entering markets. For instance, if you don't have your things in order with CIPC and SARS, for instance, you won't be able to get into formal markets because they require such things. They have no attention to the branding, the certifications you need. So I would encourage farmers to make use of resources. If you can afford to, get a specialist that can help you with the administration for your business. Or again, make use of business incubators or your departments, your local departments that can help you with the administration aspect of your business, because that is very important for accessing support, accessing new markets, and just generally accessing more resources in order to make your business grow.
Thank you, Siziphiwe. You've shared such valuable information and advice, but I'm wondering if there's anything else that you would like to expand on or touch on. Please do.
Yeah, I think we've pretty much covered everything that I can think of for now. Obviously, if there are any other questions or anything, farmers can reach out to me, maybe pop me an email, which is jojo@agricastadvisory.co.za.
Thank you so much to Siziphiwe Jojo, who is an agricultural economist and head of business at Agricast Advisory Services. You can, of course, read the article to this episode by visiting www.foodformzansi.co.za. And that brings us to the end of this episode. Remember to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform. From me, Patricia Tembo, our technical producer, Megan van der Vent, and the rest of #Team Food for Mzansi, thank you for listening.